Hello everybody. So I just thought I'd make a quick video showing how to fix some of these issues with photoshopping people into chairs or rooms or whatever. So I picked 3 examples, so hopefully most of those lessons should apply to others. So go to Photoshop first. So basically I have one of the sketches for a chair. Then I have a picture of Emily. And so I'll start with this first. So I guess the first thing I would say is, as close as possible, if you can get yourself sitting in this position to begin with, you'll save yourself a lot of time at Photoshop. She's pretty much in the right position. It could be a little more of a side view, so there will be a little bit of issues, but it's nothing too major. So first I will start with this. I always make a duplicate of this picture just in case, so duplicate layer. I usually just turn off the background just so I have the original. I'm also using Windows, so if I say a command or something, it's not for Mac, it's just for Windows. But there's an alternative. So what I'm going to do first is do the lasso tool. You can also just press L. And for Windows, if you hold the Alt button and then scroll with your wheel, you can zoom in and zoom out. So basically, what I would do is just start to draw a lasso around her. This is probably the best way I know to do. You could try to use the wand tool, but it may not be worth it. Sometimes the results are not that good. You just don't have to be exact, but just try to get most of the... It can't hurt to get most of the detail. I think here I'll probably just get a larger chunk just so I have it. If you do make a mistake, like if you go there by accident, you can press the backspace and that'll undo your most recent mistake or move. It's almost done. May take a little bit of time, but it's better to not rush this stuff. And it's actually not a bad idea to maybe get to a checkpoint. So I mean, if you do like that much, at least you have that much that's saved, because if something happens, you could lose that whole thing. So if you just go up here and make sure on this button here, that'll actually add your selection, so you can keep on going. At least then you have a bit of a checkpoint. The hair is a little bit tricky, but I mean, I guess it's better to... We'll just get as much hair as we can for now. You can always take it out later, but we can't necessarily get it back. Okay. So that's a pretty good selection, I would say. So now there's a couple ways to do this. Probably, I mean, if we needed to, we could always do the smart layer, and that'll actually keep the old selection. So this is the layer right here, then that's the mask. So for instance, we do the brush tool. We can actually get back the original without losing that information. But in this case, it's really not that important because I don't think we'll really be needing that. So I'm going to just undo what I did, and instead of doing a layer mask, I'll just do a delete. So if you notice, that actually deletes what I selected. That's not good. So Control Z, I'll go back to that. And then what I really want to do is to select the inverse. So that'll select the opposite, and then I'll delete that. So that's fine. Then Control Delete gets rid of my ants. My ants are these little things that walk around. I'll get rid of that. So now I'm just left with the picture. Looks pretty good. So I'll do Control A, selects the whole thing, and then Control C is what copies it. And I'll go to the chair, and I'll do Control V. and we can already tell that she's very big. So Control T, that's to transform, but you can also go to image, or let's see, edit, transform, scale, and then just holding shift. So I don't really want to lose the proportions. I'll try to get it at least workable so I can look at it. So that's pretty good. I like to name my layers, so that's a good habit, and then I'll probably duplicate this just so I have an extra copy of it, and turn off the original. You can already see that there's some junk right here that should be gone, so what I would like to do is the clone stamp, which is S. You can click there, and then to increase or decrease the size of this, you can use the brackets. So next to your P button, there's brackets. So the left bracket will make it smaller, the right bracket will make it larger. Keep in mind, if you have your caps lock on, it won't even show up. So make sure your caps lock is off. That would cause some confusion. So basically, I don't know if you've ever used this tool or not, but I'll take a sample. So Alt is to take a sample, and I'll just take a sample like that. Looks good, and then all you gotta do is it'll just pretty much copy that sample wherever it is. But you gotta be careful, because like that will happen, and that's not good. So I may have to take another sample and just kind of keep on doing it to where there. I get that out of the way, and I'm good to go. So I'll click back on Emily, on her layer, and I'm kind of like that. I think I don't really want to cut off her head here, and I just want to give myself some more room, so I'll probably increase the canvas size. So I'll go to canvas, the anchor. I don't want the bottom to move, that's fine, but I do want the top to move. So I'll make the height, I think maybe I'll try 8 inches, and I might just make the width 6. Okay, so now I got a little extra room, but now I'll turn off her for just 1 second. So this is where, so let's see, if I just make a new layer real quick called white, this is just to show, and I put that at the bottom. It's pretty hard to notice the difference. There is a difference, so I don't know. You could probably get away with it, but the easier way would either to be to make all this white, or just to use the clone stamp some more and just make all this the same kind of textured color. It's not really color, it's just white, but it has a texture. So I think I'll probably just do this, because I don't mind the texture. It's kind of nice. It makes it feel more like a drawing by hand, so I'll just fix that real quick. But doing this, you can give yourself more space than you have in real life. So there, looks good. So I'll turn back on her. Plenty of room. This is kind of the tricky part, because we have to size it up, and I don't exactly know how big this chair is in real life, and I don't know how big Emily is in real life, so I really don't know exactly, but I'll get as close as I can. Kind of just have to eyeball it, but that looks, I think that looks pretty reasonable. I think that's pretty good. If not, you can always change it. So there's that. And then, well, you should save this too. I'm not gonna. Actually, I will save it. So make sure you save. Okay. So as far as we're concerned with this picture, well, I'll keep it there for now. But we probably don't need to keep that open. So with Emily selected, that layer, what I'll do is I'll create a mask. So that's just what I showed in the first part, where if I go to the mask and I press B for brush, or select it over here, so that's a really big brush. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller with the brackets. And then, so right now the color's white, so that means nothing will happen. It'll actually put back. So to change it, we press this little arrow here, or you can press X on the keyboard. So I want my primary color to be black. That will take away. And then if we press X, that's white again, it'll make it come back. So that way we don't lose any of this image. It's there, so we can adjust it very nicely. So the first thing I think I'll do is I'll probably just use the lasso tool. So press L or go up to where it's at, to just do a quick selection of the chair. more than likely your body's really not going to be seen past this point anyway, so that's what I'll start with. And then you don't need to be so exact down here because of course your body's not going to show. Okay, so that's a pretty good selection. Turn back on Emily, and then this is where I'll use the brush tool, and I'll press X because I want black to be the primary, and that'll actually get away part of her body there. Then I'll press Control D, that turns off your ants. So this looks pretty good, and the bad part is if I want to adjust this, that's not really very helpful. So if you see this little lock here, it's actually, sometimes you want the mask to be locked to the actual image, but like this time I probably don't, so I'm going to unlock it. So now if I press the arrow to move things or press V, it won't, she is moving pretty much free, but the mask is staying where that chair is. So I don't want that to move. So that is something that will help me kind of reposition it if I need to. So I'm going to leave that unlocked, and then I'm going to go down here because there's some issues. We got to figure out this. I'm going to turn off her for a second, and I'm just going to do my lasso tool again around here. Just do my best to somewhat get the gray part. Okay, that should be good. I'll turn back on Emily and brush my brush. So that gets rid of that. Doesn't look bad. The angle is a little bit off. I mean, her knee probably wouldn't. I mean, I guess if you really wanted to, you could actually just. Actually, yeah, I think I'll just do that. So I pressed the lasso tool. I'll probably just get rid of her knee because technically this elevation, there's not really much of a perspective. So if I get rid of her knee, it'll actually help make the perspective a little bit more believable. And then I'll use the brush tool and just brush it away. So I'm not deleting anything. So if I right click on this and I say disable layer mask, it all comes back. So that's what I love about the layer mask. So that's really good. That helps a lot. And I don't know. I'm tempted just to actually get rid of that foot there because I don't know. It's kind of confusing. So, oops. Push B for brush and just brush it away. And I think, these things really aren't helping me either, so I'll get rid of that. Alright, so then we have to deal with this part right here, so it's actually easier than you would think. So I'll select the layer, not the mask, the layer. Then I'll press S for clone stamp, or just go down here, click it. Then I'll use my brackets, make it smaller. And basically what I'm going to do is my sample will be right here, and I'm just going to try to get rid of this because that's what was on the original picture from that chair, so we can easily get rid of this. And I might have to zoom in a little bit here just to look around. Don't forget Alt is the shortcut, Alt in your scroll wheel for zooming in, at least on Windows. So this part is kind of confusing. You just have to kind of watch where you take your samples. Just be patient, especially for like this part. This is important because it's like a seam between her pant and her leg. So if you get that right, then the rest is pretty much smooth sailing. And you can't really tell at this distance. So just try to do our best. Just get rid of that thing. Now that's kind of weird, but you can kind of see where the shadows are and everything, and so as long as the light spots are light and the dark spots are dark, it should read fine, because like from this distance your brain won't really be able to tell. I mean, you can sort of tell, but not really. If you really wanted to, you could do a little more work on her toes or something, but it doesn't really matter a ton. But just use the brush tool. Don't delete. Use the brush tool and make sure you select the mask. That's important. So, looks pretty good. It could be a little bit better if she was sitting in a more, a similar view to this chair. Could also, I guess, could get rid of this part too. I don't know. Hair is kind of one of those things that's annoying to get rid of. what I would do is maybe just go to the stamp or the mask, click on that, and then we can actually make our brush softer. So if you click here, click make the brush soft. So this is kind of a tug, I guess, at this depth, but see how it kind of there's a gradient. So maybe that'll be helpful for right around here. Because this is hair, it's not like it's a solid, it's very loose. You know, for the things like her shirt and her neck, those things are a little bit harder. So we could actually just lasso that up and then make that a little bit sharper. But things like her hair, that can be softer. Just do that by hand. Looks pretty good. Then maybe a little bit back here. I mean, this is kind of, you don't need to do all this, but it helps a little bit. So I'd say that that is pretty good. At least better than it was. But if you get a better position for yourself, you'll save yourself a lot of time in Photoshop. Okay, so we're not going to save that. The next one, we'll do Reagan next. Okay, so this one will be a little bit more tricky, but I think we can do it. So first, just duplicate this, just in case. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to just try to lasso her. Oops. So if you make a mistake, just remember to press backspace and you'll undo your most recent click. And yeah, this is the problem. I kind of zoomed in a little bit too much, I think, and unfortunately you can't zoom out. So I'll probably just finish up what I was doing. Because I don't want to be this zoomed in. It's kind of tedious. So I did that. Now I can zoom in and out. So I'll zoom out a little bit more, and I'll just make sure that button is selected, and that will add to my selection. You can also take away with that button. And then this button will make you start over, which I definitely don't want that. So I do the add button, and when you're doing this, if you double click, that'll connect it. So that's a good key to learn too. So just do a little bit, and pretty much just get it to where it's just her. You don't really want the chair. And this is kind of. I think I'll probably just get that much. Like I said, you can always take away, but you can't always add. So when in doubt, just take a little bit extra. You can kind of move the screen over by just putting your mouse on the edge, and it'll move. Just so you know. And I mean, if you're really careful, if you really want to save time, you could actually, when you're posing for the shot or whatever, you could actually put a background behind you that's all white or all black, just one color. That actually might make it easier to use the wand tool. So if you think about it like that, you can do some things to make this easier on yourself. But it is not so bad. I mean, it only takes a little bit of time. And the results are pretty good. Okay, where's that? Then just double click and it'll complete that. So that's pretty good. So for this I'll just inverse my selection. Don't really need that anymore. Looks pretty good. So I'll do Control A, then Control C, that copies it. Then I'll go over to the actual chair and press Control V. Okay, so this is saying, I think I need to go to image mode. That's RGB. Image mode. Yeah, that should be fine. Let's see what happens. That's fine. Okay, so this time she's very small. So I made my layer. Yeah, I always like to duplicate my original just in case. So the first thing you need to do is flip this. You need to flip her or flip this. So I think I'll just flip this right here in the sketch. So the easiest way to do that is to go to edit, edit, transform, flip horizontal. Okay. that's an important step. So we'll click on her, and I'll do edit, transform, scale, or Control T. And she needs to be bigger. Probably. I don't really know how tall she is or how tall. I don't know the dimensions necessarily, but it's a good guess. And I think I'll probably increase the canvas size just a little bit like I did last time. So, let's see, the height is 56. I might make that, I don't know, we'll try 58 and make that 40, maybe 45. Yeah, so that's nice. It gives you a little more breathing room, and we'll see how this works, but I mean, there's a couple of ways to go around this. You could actually lasso out all the background from your chair, but I'm not going to do all that right now, so I'm just going to go back to my clone stamp, press S, or just select over here. I'm going to sample right here. I'm going to try to just extend my page a little bit more. Usually this works pretty well. You might just have to look out for random shadows and stuff that pop up. Usually, like down here, I'll probably have to sample down here, because that's really a different color. Like if I do that, it's totally different. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's a little more complicated than you'd think, but usually you can do it. I mean, you just need to fool the eye to believing. So make it a little bit smaller. Now that's kind of a tricky part where it's better to just keep it big, and maybe right here would be a good spot to sample from. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then up here I'll just continue with this. This should be easier. Okay, so that's pretty good. We have a little bit of breathing room. If you really wanted to, you could pretty easily get rid of all this. Oops, make that a little smaller. You could pretty easily get rid of all this stuff. It's kind of, yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. The other way to do that would be to use the spot healing brush. So this actually might work better. The shortcut's J, or you can press that button. Basically, you can just draw a line. And yeah, usually it does actually a pretty good job. If it's just a simple line, this is really the way to go. Except like that stuff, you might have to do that with the clone stamp tool just to fix that. But I mean, that looks pretty good, I think. So that can get rid of some of these pesky dimensions, or like I said, you could just lasso them out all together. So that kind of gives you an example of that. We're going to focus more on Reagan and fitting her into her chair. So she said the chair kind of is very large, and I guess she's kind of sinks into the chair, so we're going to try to show that with this sketch best we can. So the first thing I think I'll do is zoom in on the chair. This looks like this is the cushion, so I'm gonna start to highlight this, because obviously your back is not going to be shown. This is going to be, you know, shown before your back, although this is a perspective. It's drawn sort of like a perspective, so that's something we have to take into account. As far as I'm concerned, it will probably look something like that. So I'll turn back on her, and now if I do the mask, that doesn't really help me very much, so I need to undo that, and I need to actually invert this selection. And I always mess this up, but basically whatever the mask is selecting, that's what you keep. So you invert the selection, and then you make the mask, and then it keeps her, but it gets rid of that part. So looks like that's a step in the right direction. So we'll turn this off for 1 second, and then so this is the trickier part, because I'll save that for later, but we know we need to get rid of this armrest. This needs to cut out Reagan, because this would be in front of her. So we'll just try to select it. It's difficult sometimes because it is a sketch. It's not like there's a lot of straight lines, so you just gotta try your best on it. You can just extend that, because you know you don't want anything to show up right there, obviously. So just keep on doing it. Now the dimensions, we don't really want to show those, I don't think, so I'm not going to include those. You could if you want to. I'll do a double click, or if you're close enough, it'll just complete it itself. But it's maybe easier just to do a double click. So we'll turn back on Raygun and go back to our brush tool. We'll have to use our brackets to make it larger, and then we'll just paint. Okay, then we'll do Control D to deselect. We don't need that anymore. So already that's looking pretty decent. Something's still not quite right. It's pretty close though. Oh yeah. So this is important too. We have to make sure because if we really don't want this to happen, we want to be able to move Raygun but not move the mask. So just unlock the mask, and that helps a lot. It keeps the mask where we want it exactly. So it's kind of chopped off here. I mean, ideally, I don't know. We'll see what we can do. This is, you don't really need to do this, but I mean, you can kind of imagine of what it should look like. And then you can use the clone stamp tool, so S. And I mean, you can kind of add things that are taken away from your picture. So let's see what we can do. That looks pretty good. And now do Control D. So pretty much that's kind of noticeable when you don't have that, because it looks like it's just your butt's kind of chopped off. So by adding that, kind of makes it feel a little bit more believable. And so the next thing I would probably do is, I don't really like the black stuff here, so I'll just cut that out with the lasso tool. So just double click, and then I'll just do it here too. If I make a shadow, I'll probably just make my own. So go back to the mask tool and then press the brush and just brush that stuff away. Looks good. And then, like I said, if we disable the mask, we get it all back. Okay. So that looks good. And if you really wanted to do a shadow, so we'll do layer, new layer. I usually just, I don't know, call it SH for shadow or something. So I usually will have black selected, and I'll make my brush a little bit smaller. And see, right now it's a pretty soft brush, so if I go to here and make it hard, it's hard. Okay, so that's the difference. Now shadows are more soft, so I'll keep it at the very softest. And what I'll do is I'll kind of just do this. I think that's probably where the shadow would be if there was any. So that looks kind of weird right now, so I'm going to move that and actually put that behind Raygun. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the mask, because I kind of want that mask to also apply to my shadow. Actually, you know what? Yeah. So the quickest way to do that is to hold your mouse over the mask and hold Control, and then click on your mask. That's the easiest way. There's another way. I think you can probably click on the mask and then right click and say, I think add mask to selection. Yeah, so that's also works. So we have that on our selection. Basically, we're going to make a mask of that. Now, that was mostly good, but so a couple of things were wrong, because we actually want to show this part. So just need to fix a couple of things. Like that, and then we need to switch that to white because we want it to come back. Okay, so that's pretty good. Oh, there's still actually, I guess that's fine. Okay, and actually the more I thought about it, well, we definitely want to keep that unlocked, but I think you might want the shadow in front. So anyway, I like doing it in all black, because all you do is just change the opacity. So we can change, that looks pretty good actually, like that, 30%. So if you just go to black, you can easily add more. I don't know, it's kind of, looks pretty good. Yeah, so that was good. And then, let's see. So that's the shadows. We'll go back to Reagan. If you wanted to spend the time, you could go to the mask and just try to make sure it's on black to take away. Just soften up some of the edges around her hair. You can also, if you click once and then hold shift and click again, it'll make a line. So that might be useful for some of you. Just some of the sharper edges you can kind of get rid of. Looks pretty good. Yes, I mean, that's pretty good, I think, for this picture. If you, like I said, if you wanted to, you could always keep on using the tools to get rid of some of these spots. Like this especially, I'll probably just get rid of that real quick. It's not that hard. Oh, except for that. So this, I'll go back to your clone stamp. So it's just sample here, so press Alt and click, and then just run over that. And here you ought to be able to use this tool, the spot healing brush. We ought to be able to use that for most of it. So use the clone stamp for the rest. That's what I find works best. Looks pretty good. And then you could crop out all the background, or you could really do whatever you want. But the point is that I'll save this too. The point is that you at least have the chair. You have all these smart layers. Well, they're not really smart, but they have masks. So if we disable that mask, we get Reagan back. It's just the way that she was when we put her in here. So I'll exit out this one. It's pretty good. I think the most important part is probably just spending time for your the lasso step. And first thing, I'm going to make a duplicate layer just to have it, and then turn that off. So I'm going to turn off Namer real quick. I'll turn her off. And then the background, I can already tell we're probably going to need more room for the head. Unless you don't want the head, then you can, I'll get into that, but in general I would just say, well, we don't want the bomb to move. I'm going to make the height, let's go with 20. So that gives me plenty of room to mess around with, and then I'll just use the clone stamp. So this right here, I need to make sure I select that. Then I'll take my sample right here, and I'll just start extending my paper up. The other way is you could just delete out all this paper color and just make it plain old white, or really you can make it any color you want to, or put it in an environment like a building. You can do a lot of stuff, but I'm just showing you this for now. If I was to do that, I'd probably just use the lasso tool, just like I'm doing for the people. Maybe you could use the wand tool. Yeah, actually, you might be able to use the wand tool for this. Yeah, I'll do that just for this one to show. So I just use the wand tool. It's also W. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a layer mask, I think, just to be safe, because I may want this stuff back. Okay, so I messed up. So what I should have done, I'll undo that. I should have done select inverse. Now I'll make a layer mask, and that's what I actually want. So I'll go to my mask, and I'll go to my brush. I don't want this stuff, so I'll make sure my color is black, and then I'll just kind of brush it away. I think I'll probably turn the hardness up too, because I don't really want to. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Looks pretty good. Just a couple of spots. Oh, that didn't work well. But, yeah, and then this. I mean, technically, we really don't want that or that. So I'm going to brush those out. And then I'm going to try to get back this. So for that, I might just have to do a lasso. I mean, that's probably the easiest way. I just want back that little part. So I'll change it back to white and then get that back. Oh, and this too. So sometimes, I mean, wand's not perfect, but you think about how much time that saved me. It probably would take me at least 5 minutes maybe to do that, or 10. So it adds up. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, so I'll save it real quick. Now in this situation, I really hate the checkerboard. It's hard to see what's going on, so I'll do layer, new, layer, and I'll just call this white. And basically I'll make sure white is selected, and then I'll press G or press the paint bucket tool and just make a white background. And then this needs to be on the bottom. So now I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'll turn back on Olivia. She seems a little bit too big for that chair, so I'm going to make her smaller. So edit, transform, scale. Oh, whoops, I'm on the wrong layer. Hold on a second. No, that's... I missed the little spot down here. So I'll just make sure I'm on black again and select my mask and just get rid of that. I don't want that. Looks good. Okay, now I select Olivia, edit, transform, scale, then hold shift to keep the proportions. And that looks pretty good. You can kind of tell, like, that looks a little bit too small. I'm just kind of guessing here, but I don't know, something like that looks pretty good. Now, I'll get into this probably if I get another image, but if you need to, you can also do transform, distort. There's a lot of things. There's transform, skew, rotate, distort, perspective, warp. So if you were at an angle or something, you could kind of tweak your person to get the right angle. We don't really need to do this for this one, but that's where it is if you needed to do that. So we'll do that, and then I just like to make my layer mask first. I already know I'm not going to want to link it, so you can just unlock it. So there's not a lot I need to do because, well, actually, so really, this is the tricky part, because really the back of your knee should really be like right there, I would say. So what we'll do, I'll just turn off Olivia for a second, and doesn't really matter on the bottom, but the top does matter. Turn it back on. And get the brush. Oops. Okay, so this is where it's kind of confusing. So I think probably take away. So this is the take away button. So whatever I do with my lasso tool now will actually be subtracted. So I want all of that, and then I think over here I want all of that too. Okay, so I'll go back to my brush tool and make sure I'm on my mask and just get rid of that part. That feels pretty right. If you want to, you could also do some other things. One thing you could do is you can alter kind of the colors. Actually, first of all, I'd probably crop this because there's a lot of extra space. So if we press C to crop, or just go up here, we don't need that much space. That's kind of nice right there. Yeah, I mean, this seems fine. You press enter. That kind of just helps, I think, a little bit. If we wanted to, so if I make a copy, if I duplicate this layer, okay, then I'll just turn off the original. If we wanted to get this, if we wanted to make Olivia look more like the chair, like color-wise, we could go to Image, Adjustments, Match Color, and then, so I'll show you, the source would be this Photoshop file here. Then layer, we can see that the chair, actually I really should have named this to make it chair, so that's my bad, but background color. So this makes, it pretty much takes the color of the chair and applies it to Olivia. So it's kind of cool, and you can kind of turn the fade up. Like that almost looks like, it kind of looks like you are part of the sketch, so that's kind of interesting, I think. It's, turn the original, then I don't know, it's just something cool that you could do. And I mean, if you really wanted to, you could also, you could add a stroke. You could actually make it almost look like, oops, that's a little bit, well, that's way too big. Yeah, if you get the, and what you can do is click, you can just click here and then use your scroll wheel. That's a little bit easier than dragging and stuff, but like that's pretty much the same size as your sketch, and then you could turn down the opacity a little bit. Yeah, so you can pretty much, that looks about right. Or actually, you could probably just change the blend mode to something else. Yeah, I mean, you can mess around with this stuff for a long time, but you know, basically, you can get to a point where it looks like you're part of the sketch. So that's one thing that you could do that's pretty interesting. And of course, you could also. The important thing is just to duplicate. You don't want to lose this layer, the original. So with this one, you can maybe go up to filter, gallery, and there's a whole bunch of cool things you could do here. So you could make yourself. Let's see. I think there's like a poster edges, cutout, thumb grain, colored pencil. So I mean, you could make yourself look like you actually were a sketch. Graphic pen. Halftone pattern, that's kind of cool. I don't know. So there's a lot of things you could do with the filter gallery, and these things are pretty simple. I mean, it doesn't take much time. Just to give your thing a little more character or pizzazz. That's kind of cool. So I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do, and you could also wait. Actually, I want that back. Oh well. Yeah, so you could even change the levels, or wait, no, actually I don't really want to do that. Or the curves, I guess, maybe that. I mean, there's different things that you could do. And if you really wanted to, you could select both of these. So if you press Control, you can select two layers at once, and then go to Layer. Actually, right-click. Somehow there's a way to merge layers. I know the shortcut is Control E, but there's a way I think up here to layer merge somewhere. But you can kind of merge that layer, and so you can do some pretty interesting things. Kind of like that. You can just make sure. I guess the point is that you can have some fun with this stuff. And the other thing I forgot to mention too. So you just turn off all this stuff. If you did all this work to save yourself or to cut yourself out, turn off everything just for yourself. And what I would do is do File, Save As, then save this as a PNG. Then you can actually just name it for yourself, or you should have like a collection. So if you save yourself, and so now if I go to where I saved it, I just open it up, you can see there's no white around it. So this is a PNG. So basically, if I want to use this again, like if I just drag it into Photoshop, let's say I like put on the original background or something. Well, this is the one I just drug into Photoshop, and it's ready to go. It's already cut out, so that'll save you a lot of time. And you already cut it out, so you might as well save it as a PNG. So if you save it as a JPEG, it'll actually come with a white background, so that doesn't help you really any. So I would recommend saving it as a PNG, just so you have it if you ever need it for again. Okay, so now we're going to open up the next file. Gonna get Marissa in her chair. So these are the original files, and I actually already did some of the work. Yeah, so here it is. So that's the original picture. It'll be hard because it's actually a perspective, so it's not just like a straight on side view. So on here I already trimmed her out, so I'll exit the other ones. And then on here I also included the chair, and I'll explain why I did that. So basically I put the chair on a mask, or I did a layer mask already, and then the chair I can turn it on and off. But basically I want that chair because I'll use that chair I'll try to align that chair with the chair that she actually sketched. We'll see, that might help me just get the proportions right and the angle right. So the first thing, I'm going to duplicate the layer. It's always a good idea. Then I'm going to go to transform, and first I'm going to scale it a little bit. Okay, then I'm going to try to distort it. So this is one option that you can do to try to get the chair to be the right perspective and proportion. So you can see I'm kind of just trying to line up the legs with the sketch, trying to get as close as I can. Ideally, it would probably be far easier just to take a picture of yourself in that orientation. You'd save yourself a lot of time, but in this case, we'll just try our best to see what we can do. Okay, so that looks good for that. Okay, so we're going to edit, transform, then warp. So this will give you the most flexibility, but it's also the most risky, because you can seriously ruin your layer if you're not careful. And you also have to keep in mind that you can only undo once when you're in this transformation mode. The main thing, you just want to get the bottom corners to be somewhat straight. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we can see the distort one. I'm going to actually rename this just so I know. And then the warp one. So just two different ways of doing this. And then there's the original still. So original, then the distort, and then the warp. So the warp one I think is a little bit better, so that's the one we'll use. Something, it's pretty close, but now it's nice because we used the layer mask, so we can, if like we clicked it, the chair's gone. So that'll help us to just visualize it without that. It's still pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's better than it was. The feet are kind of large, I think, still, but that's okay. You can't get it perfect. So I already showed you one way to do these shadows. I'll show one other way. If you go down to the FX button and then do a drop shadow. So this is another way that's a little bit more easy than the brush way. So basically you can change the distance and the angle. It's basically if there's like a sun and it casts a shadow on you or off of you, where it would go. So the important thing is just to keep the opacity low, and then to okay. So that shadow moves with Marissa, so that's a really nice feature of it. And we can turn it on and off. And if we want to, we just double click on the FX. We can edit all of our settings again. Just go down to drop shadow. And there's a whole lot of other settings that you can play with, but for now just the drop shadow is good. So the other way is just we can apply the layer mask, and we're just given a brand new layer. And with that layer, so it's just a brand new one, we can select the select the selection. So load selection, press OK. It's the marching ants around my layer, and what I'm going to do is just press B for brush, and then I have my black, so I'm going to make it all black. So I'm going to put this below the original layer, so you can kind of see what I'm going to do with this. Basically, I'll put it like that, and then you can turn down the opacity, and let me turn off, yeah. So basically that more or less accomplishes the same thing. Now it's kind of a hard edge, so what you could do is you could load the selection again, because then you get the pattern around the shadow that we just made. And you could go to select, refine edge, and you could feather that, and that might help a little bit, but we're not going to focus too much. Well, that was probably not good. Yeah, that's I mean, that's not my favorite way of doing things, like a shadow, but I think the drop shadow for this is maybe just as good, or just manually getting the brush tool and drawing it like I did earlier. That would be fine too. But that's pretty much the gist of it for Marissa. And so the idea is that you could use this technique for placing yourself not only in a chair but also in a building or like a section or a plan or an elevation. So it should be fairly the same idea. The important part is just to get a good selection and then use these layer masks, because those will save you a lot of time and also they will allow you to go backwards and retain some of the information before you delete it. So hopefully that helps a little bit. If you have any other questions, I will be happy to walk through it. I can even do this live. That's fine too. Then thanks for the 4 of you who let me use your pictures on this demo. So hopefully it helps a little bit.